25 essential Atari 8-bit horizontal shoot-'em-ups for your Atari 400 Mini. Horizontal blasters have to be one of my absolute favorite genres of arcade and home games. The first one I ever played that blew my socks off was the Atari 2600 version of Vanguard, which coincidentally got an improved Atari 5200 release and an unofficial port through the Atari 8-bit computers. The games on this list run the gamut from Scramble-style classic cave blasters, space shooters, and even a few games that add a small touch of adventure to the mix. After researching for a couple weeks, I've found that, again, like most genres on the Atari 8-bit computers, there are far too many good games to cover in a single digestible video, so I have narrowed my list down to just the ones I feel should be highlighted first. So please sit back and enjoy my list of the 25 essential Atari 8-bit horizontal scrolling shoot-'em-ups in alphabetical order. First up is AirStrike II. AirStrike II from 1986, released by English Software, is considered a classic of early UK Atari 8-bit gaming, and while I find it very challenging, it adds an extra element to the Scramble style formula by requiring you to shoot the fuel or you'll run out of laser weapons, which can be deadly. Atari Blast from 2016 by Paul Lay is the shooter you have to play. The first level is vertical, but every other level after that switches between horizontal and vertical and is an absolute showcase for what should have been done with the Mini Amiga in the 80s. Attack of the Mutant Camels from 1987, released by Mastertronic, developed by Llamasoft, coded by Jeff Minter, is the llama-based Zarjazz-filled clone of the Parker Brothers' Return of the Jedi 2600 game that you have to play, and more than makes up for the fact that the original release never saw life on the Atari computers. Callisto, a homebrew from the 2012 Abbott contest by Cosine, looks great, is fun to play, and doesn't have one-hit deaths, but it's still a huge challenge on your joystick hand and fire button finger. The official Defender port, released in 1982 by Atari, was coded on an Apple II, and even though it doesn't use all the capabilities of the Atari 8-bits, it's an absolute blast to play, and shows the kinds of fast graphics that can be obtained even without the use of the GTIA and Antic by simply blasting pixels to the Atari's memory screen addresses. Dropzone, released in 1984 by US Gold, coded by legend Archer McLean, takes the unofficial Defender port he was working on and shows what can be achieved by using all of the Atari's special chips and processors, making likely the best Defender-style game released so far on the platform. The Eliminator is a 1982 Adventure International release that requires you to fly your plane over the landscape, blasting enemies and rescuing prisoners, while adding the unique ability to fly and shoot at angles and not just straight ahead. The Extirpator, a 1988 Firebird release. You control a large spaceship flying over various landscapes and shooting at hostile objects that approach from the right side of the screen, while on your side is a multiple hit health bar and a powerful laser weapon that tends to overheat right as you need it the most. Fort Apocalypse, released in 1982 by Synapse, is a Steve Hales classic that, like a few games on the list, is primarily a horizontal shooter, but also adds some vertical exploration and rescuing to the mix, making it an extremely well-presented, challenging, and fun experience. LaserGates, a 1982 developed but 1985 released a Magic game for the Atari 8-bit computers, never got its own release outside of a Magic compilation, but is one of the absolute best classic shooters on the 8-bits and shows exactly how a Magic should have been upgrading their 2600 games for the Atari 400 and 800 in 1982 and not just releasing straight 6507 to 6502 ports. In Red Rat's very enjoyable Laserhawk, your civilization is under attack, and it's down to you and your Laserhawk helicopter to destroy the 5 heavily defended cities belonging to Proc Errata while dodging ordnance and refueling in the air. Released by the APX as Caverns of Mars 2, and then by Antic in 1984 as Mars Mission 2, this Greg Christensen Scramble-like follow-up to his impressive classic Caverns of Mars is quite fun and probably the best of its kind until Playsoft's homebrew Scramble came about more than 30 years later. In Mirax Force, a Chris Murray-coded 1987 Tynesoft release, we find the first of a handful of Uridium-style destroy the Dreadnought defenses and then land and blow it up clones for the Atari 8-bit machines, and unlike most of the other clones, it separates the foreground immovable death-shattering objects from the foreground destroyable objects much better than most of its competition.
Game over. Mirax Force.
Oxygène BE, a 2020 update of the original from 1988, is a German Uridium clone that looks every bit as good as the C64 original, with the only thing missing being the incredible Andrew Braybook musical score. Protector 2 is a 1982 Synapse release and a Mike Potter classic. It adds a bit of strategy and human rescuing to what is essentially an enormously entertaining blast fest that requires you to save 18 people under threat by the Fruxillian slime hordes and move them to the City of Hope before the volcano explodes. You can always count on Paul Lay and Playsoft to deliver, and Scramble, a 2018 unofficial arcade conversion, is the best of its kind on the Atari 8-bits and 5200, and probably only bested gameplay-wise by Paul Lay's own Atari Blast. Shadow World, another Mike Potter classic, released in 1983 by Synapse, has you destroying Bosconian-like Regilian Empire mother pod ships and other nasties with your blaster and smart bombs as they slowly descend from the sky to attack your planet. Sidewinder, a 1986 Futureware release by the same developer as the upcoming on the list Thunderfox, is a very challenging Super Cobra style Hellion Caves blaster arcade carefully maneuver and blast fest. Super Cobra, the 1983 Parker Brothers official arcade port release, was very challenging and the best of its kind in the early 8-bit years, and one of my personal favorite cartridges to play in our Atari 800 when it was released. In the multi-way asteroid-style genre-defined Survivor, a 1982 Synapse game by Richard Carr, developer of the also genre-defined Air Support, you have to fight your way through endless fortresses of mounted turrets and asteroids if you really want to be the Survivor. Thunderfox is a 1987 XEGS release that is better than the sub 5 out of 10 score it has on Atari Mania, but is not up to par with the other Uridium clones we have listed so far, but is notable because it adds the necessity to replenish your smart bombs by flying back to the left side of the screen and visiting your mothership, which adds strategy to a game that has a few too many background scenery deaths. The SNK Vanguard port from 1983 by Atari was officially only released on the 5200 and is every bit as fun and difficult as its unique horizontal and sometimes diagonal and even some other times vertical arcade counterpart. X8, a 2013 ABAC winner by Pereira and Brown, is a fun homebrew horizontal extra weapons collecting blaster only bested on the Atari 8-bits by Playsoft's Atari Blast, and has oodles of charm that will keep you blasting for quite a while. Zeppelin is a 1983 Synapse-released Mataga-coded brilliant game that, like Fort Apocalypse, adds some adventure elements to what is an outstanding blaster and unique experience that was only bested or equaled by Blaster Master on the NES. Zybex, a 1988 Zeppelin release, is considered by most Atari 8-bit fans to be the best classically released extra weapon-style horizontal blaster on the Atari 400, 800, XL, and XE. And who am I to disagree? Bring a friend to your Atari 400 Mini because it allows two players to work together to escape execution while collecting Zybex crystals in order to fight Zybex itself. That's all for this time. Like I said, there are far more than 25 games in this genre. Please send me any that I missed so I can add them to the follow-up video. Until next time, have fun playing your choice of horizontal blasters on the machine of your choice in the vertical blank.
We were children of the Silicon Revolution, an X generation conscripted to fight the console and home computer wars. A product of an analog 70s childhood, became of digital age in the 80s, believing we could affect the world 8 bits at a time. Armed with joysticks, full-stroke keyboards, Jolt Cola, and MTV haircuts, we proceeded into the vertical blank. There, we stayed up late at night, devising incantations from D&D rulebooks and beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. Video games were the match, and programming was the fuse, as the infinite possibilities of the digital world exploded into the internet age to come. We are Generation Atari.
Into the vertical blank.
We are the forgotten generation, a misplaced slice of the 20th century when birth rates were as low as expectations for the future. We lived under the threat of constant nuclear annihilation, playing outside, but always inherently knowing the future was indoors. We are the second half of Generation X. We were some of the first to play video games, to program home computers, and record CDs to cassette mixtapes. Our generation was nourished by new wave, imperfect punk rock, and John Hughes movies. We built Web 1.0 from the ground up using our childhood 8-bit and 16-bit programming skills. They call us Gen X. We prefer the vertical blank generation, where magic happens between the lines, because that's where we live, love, and thrive. We are Generation Atari.
Into the vertical blank.
The vertical blank is the space between the last line of the card frame and the first line of the next, where off-screen calculations create a cathode ray tube display. Exists literally between the lines, invisible yet all-seeing, in a void where magic occurs that is never seen, only experienced. The vertical blank is an omniscient force containing the nuances that make our nostalgia a reality. It's the transcendental location that holds our best memories, biggest joys, greatest fears, and our most terrible losses. You've been warned. You can stop this tape now, turn around, for once you've entered, there may be no escape. All the scan lines have been written. It's time to enter the vertical blank.
into the vertical blank.
Next frame calculated. Prepare to write new data. V blank ending.